Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Here you find us airing out our clean laundry back there. I am You're going to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Bob. And this is Tuesday, the 31st of March. Tomorrow will be April Fool's Day in a scant few hours. And would be nice if, John, or Josh Booth, back to Eden. Hey, Eden. So it's been a rainy, kind of gloomy day. This is, I got a number of things going on in my body and have been for years. And when you get my age, a couple of interesting things occur. There's that song, there is a season, turn, 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 and you're born and you're a child and you're adolescent, you're a teenager, young adult, middle-aged, and then you get this age, right? And some people call it old, and I don't like to see myself as old. What I am is an elder, right? So and my status is elder, right? Meaning I've been around long enough to see a bunch of stuff, right? I've been long enough around, and I've been blessed enough to have had great teachers, mentors, people in my life who really manifested interesting things for themselves, the people around them, for the world at hand, right? And I was blessed again with a personality and characteristics where, as a youngster, I was beat up by a nun, broke my jaw, my eye orbit, couldn't see too well as a kid, and I couldn't talk too well, which led to a stutter, which led me to become a active listener, right? So I would only say things that were well put out, that I listened, I observed, and I would always ask a question, right? Instead of making a statement of, this is right, you're wrong. No, I'd say, well, no, I'd ask a real pointed question, right? And so I had some really great teachers, and when I got beat up, that nun who beat me up didn't really know how connected my family was, that my godfather was a cardinal. So, they wanted to send me off to a Catholic hospital and give me a lobotomy right that day and say, see, it was his fault. But my mother came and got me, and I was like, bleeding. And she, like I said, I had to have my jaw wired and my hand put in a cast because a nun broke my hand, and so that's when my handwriting wasn't that good from that point on. I can barely read my own handwriting. My mom was the only one who could ever read my handwriting without any real trouble. Anyway, so I'm going to read you from the Book of Runes. And this is the relationship, right? And the rune that I picked earlier today was this one here that looks like an F, right? And it's Fehu. That's how it's spelled in Gaelic. Few, right? Enjoy your good fortune and remember to share it, for the mark of a well-nourished self is the ability to and willingness to nourish others. The Book of Runes, possessions, right? And so here I am, so the thing you realize when you grow old and become an elder, you realize how much you are like your parents, biologically, emotionally, intellectually. You're very much like them. And if you come to the understanding of that, then it's a prescient moment of abundance and generosity. Not that your parents leave you any money or anything of that nature that most people see as abundance. And so I have all of the maladies, physical and emotional, that my parents had. So my mom had diabetes. My dad had hypoglycemia, which is the opposite of diabetes. My mom had, because of her diabetes, and because of her working in a hospital, the formative, from 16 to 35, running hospitals and running all over the place and ruling, um, you know, um, she got arthritis in her legs. She had pulmonary problems. I luckily don't have the pulmonary problems. She had charcoal legs. I have those. Right? And arthritis, and I have those. And my dad had a blood disorder, which was kind of like aplastic anemia. So it's very interesting because of, I'm pretty much both my parents. I got my mom's German rocket scientist brain, calculator up here, and this ability to, it's willpower, to focus, to manifest. My mom really had that in spades. What universities did you attend? Well, where did I attend? I went to, first I went to a Maryknoll University at the age of 6. Right? And I hung out in a carrel with these 8 Maryknoll priests, right? Because that's after I got, I was mending from being beat up by a nun. That's where and it was like being with Plato and Socrates and these guys. These were Maryknolls. They weren't really sicko priests, and they were scholars, right? And so they joined the priesthood to be a scholar, right? And so one was a shrink, and one was a social scientist, one was an anthropologist, one was a physicist, one was a mathematician, one was a literary scholar, and 2 were ancient theologians. One went all the way back to Mesopotamia, the other one and further the other way into Atlantis and the ancients, and the other went from that point, up to Napoleon. And so I hung out with those guys for about 8 months, and I was their little guinea pig, and they were testing me on all kinds and seeing how I could learn. And the guy was a shrink. He was one of the people who developed the Rorschach test, right? He was big into testing, and but he felt that testing wasn't the be end and end all. It was just a point of where you could plumb the depths, right? And so all these guys, I would hang out with them, and 24/7, and I would, and I learned Latin and Greek and German, and I learned to be what is known as a polyglot. When I hear something, so I couldn't speak too well, couldn't see too well, but it sharpened my hearing, and I could listen actively. And these guys taught me how to actively listen, right? So that was the first university at 6. And then Columbia, when my grandma, she lived up there in Harlem. Columbia was right there. I would hang out there. And I hung out at um, a college called it was a girls' school. It was on 69th and Lexington. Oh, its name will pop into my mind. It was like the Harvard for women, right? Um, it'll pop into my mind. And the first real university that I was going to matriculate through was Cooper Union down in the Lower East Side, and it was an amazing school. And I went there when I was 16. Grandpa Stoll got me in there, and it was an engineering school. It was an architect school and an art school. You went there to start engineering, you had to study architecture and art. Went there to study art, you had to study architecture and engineering. And if you went to study architecture, you had to study art and then anyway. So it was one of these, and it was totally. You didn't pay a nickel to go to this school, Cooper Union, and it was started before the Civil War by a guy named Cooper and his wife Union. And she was a very famous English landscape artist, and he was made a fortune out of little gizmos he invented to make the industrial age, and so they took all this money and bought a piece of property there right off of Second Avenue and built this beautiful school. And like I said, you went there, you didn't pay a nickel for nothing, board or nothing. And you didn't take a college board, you had to be a very interesting, talented, self-motivated person. And you couldn't go there until you were 20. And I went there at 16 because Grandpa Stoll, everyone owed him a favor. He just walked into the president of that school and said, "Yo, he's going to school here in the engineering department. He's got to study electrical engineering with Bob." And the president said, "Fine, Grandpa Stoll, I owe you one, so sure." And talked to me. He says, "Yeah, I think he'll do fine here." So at 16, and I was going to a prep school called the Winchington School for Boys in Winchington, Mass., which was like a college. We went to school there 7 days a week from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. And so we didn't start school until after September. We got a whole month off for Christmas. We left, November 25th and came back January 10th, something like that. And then we stayed there until May, right? End of May, we left school because we had more hours in school than almost any school, right? Because it was, this was a school for the richest people in the world to send their screw up kids, right? So, so those are the first institutions, and I went to when I kind of left that school, I went and I worked at WAAF in Worcester, Massachusetts, where in Worcester there is a college, not Brown, Dartmouth. Started with anyway. There was a school there, and I was on the radio. I was on the radio as a DJ, and I went to that school. And again, I was studying art and theater and language arts, writing and physics, right? And I wasn't matriculating. I was just hanging out, right? And I went to that school because I met a really interesting woman who was a adjunct there, or she's starting to be a professor in the art department. And I was living under my desk at the radio station, and I met her, and I got paid because the guy who owned it, he was a total flower child. His father was a Baptist minister or some kind of minister, had radios, Christian radio station. WAAF had a Christian church, and he owned the Dunkin' Donuts, and they were kind of right in the. And so I met that guy, and he said, "You want to be on the radio?" I said, "Sure." So, and I was more or less reading poetry. I was like late night, so I was the, midnight to 6 a.m. guy. and I talked about almost anything. It was Al, art and technology with Al, Bob, and so while I was going to school there, whenever I would go back to New York, I would take the Eastern Shuttle, right? And I met a stewardess who was on the Eastern Shuttle, right? And we became buds, and kind of buds with benefits. But she was way older than I was. She was like 25 when I met her, and I was like probably 17. And she thought I was funny and I was interesting, and she was a well-educated girl, but didn't come from the right side of the tracks. She came from Boston, Southie, but she was smart. So she went to Brown, I think, and got a degree in music and didn't do anything with it, and became a stewardess because she could fly around the world. He could, with her stewardess ticket, she could the other airlines and go all around the world. So she was a bud, and she had a really nice apartment in Somerville in Boston, off the Green Line or the Orange Line. And I used to hang with her. When I would go to, leave school and go to hang with my parents in New York, instead of going right on the airplane that day, I'd spend a couple of days with her and then get an airplane. And because my parents never knew what the heck I was doing or where I was, and I'm still that guy. I'm still like, where's Waldo, So I would go to, MIT and Harvard when I lived with that woman in Somerville, right? So these are all universities I would just walk into, and I had, I'll show you how I did it, So here I am. I'm wearing my bunny suit, right? If you can see, this is a onesie that I'm wearing. And I'd be wearing my pajamas. And then, I had one of my Brooks Brothers jackets that my father bought me. And this is the last one, right? When I started working for the Desperate Boys, my dad said, "Oh, you need a suit." So he took me to Brooks Brothers and bought me this jacket. Well, he bought me a suit. The pants are in there. I'm just going to put on the jacket. But this is what I would do. I would have one of my prep school, one of my Brooks Brothers jackets that my dad bought me. And I would wear it, just like this. And I would, hang out in classrooms, hang out in the library. And I always had a beard. And I had real long hair, lots of hair. I looked like a Greek god. And I would just hang out, and I'd find the most interesting, smartest professor and go to their class. And they usually were lecture classes, and I'd be there. And they'd assign papers, and I'd write a paper, And I would basically, within the first four, between that class and the next class, I would write an outline, a thesis, outline, and an opening page, right? And I would, get it all on one page. And I would come in the next class and I said, your assignment that you gave us last week, here is some ideas I have on it. I'd like your opinion. And he or she would look at me like, okay. And I'd have my name up there. And I would, sit down. And in the next class, they would kind of look at me strange and, give their lecture. And then as we were all shuffling out, I'd always be the last one there. I'd always ask a few questions before I left and had my little notepad. And the teacher would say, "Now, this is kind of interesting, but I've checked up on you and you don't go to school here. You're not registered in my class. who are you? And I said, well, I'm a itinerant scholar in training, and I've read your books, and as you can see, because a good deal of my thesis comes from the books you've written, and I'm here as a scholar in training, and you are my sensei. And they'd be flattered, amused, and interested. And it'd been like the third class, and they would say, well, you're not disruptive. You really don't say anything unless you have something worthwhile to say. And every time you say something, it's usually pretty amazing. So, yeah, you can be here. I don't care. And then we'd become buds. And so I went to, MIT. I went to Boston College. I went to Harvard through lectures, right? And, listen to Noam Chomsky, listen to a lot of great folk, right? And I would get involved in things, in theater things, in poetry things, in writing clubs, in the physics club, because I wanted to make connections. Just when I went to prep school, one of the things I did is I went to school with the richest people in the world, and I made connections with them, right? So so Cooper Union, I went to, the first class was in electrical engineering. I'm 16, everybody else is in their 20s. There's this professor there, and he's in his 50s, and he's doing a field equation on the blackboard. And he fills the whole freaking blackboard up with an equation, right? And he finishes it, and everyone's scribbling down their notes. And I kind of raise my little hand and say, excuse me, but you did that wrong. And he would look at me, what? Before he could say anything else, like, who are you or what are you doing here? I would get up and I would erase parts of his equation, and then I would show how I would have done the equation and come up with the same answer. But instead of filling out the whole blackboard, I used about that much, because a field equation, what is that? It's a trigonomic equation that deals with field strength that you're looking on the EMF scale, in the field. And in the field, when you're trying to balance a transformer, that's why you would make this equation. You're not looking for 17, past the decimal points. You just need the first three numbers, dot, and then the next two spaces, right? And that's what I'd show. And he go, but you didn't show the work, and you didn't. I said, but you don't need that. All you need is this. You don't even need a slide rule. This is back in the days of slide rules. And I did the math in my head, and he was so freaking confounded, he threw me out. And, he walked me down to the office and said, I'm throwing, he's, I don't want this student, right? And so I sat there waiting for the president to see me, and he got the story. He goes, listen, Al, I knew you were a smart kid, when Grandpa Stahl walked you in here and said that you were going to go to school here. But you can't tell a 50-year-old guy who has been an engineer teaching, not being an engineer like you and Grandpa Stahl that are out in the field, but you can't tell that guy that he's wrong. And you're 16. I mean, and I said, well, I just thought he didn't know how to do that. And I thought everybody liked to know how to do it out in the field. And he goes, obviously, you're not going to fit in the engineering department. Those people are too, anal retentive. But we have a whole new department called alternative technologies, right? And he says, I think that's where you need to go. So I did. And he was right, because instead of everyone, wearing black pants and white shirt and a little black tie and there were guys like me, who were, wearing jeans and T-shirts and onesies and jackets. Anyway, so I hung in with the guys in the back who were smoking pot in the back, right? And the professor was smoking a pipe with a cigar in it. He'd smoke a cigar through a pipe. And so that skanky pipe cigar was so smoky that You couldn't even smell the herb that these guys were smoking in the back of the class, right? And basically, our professor said, okay, listen, guys, you're going to break up in study groups and you're going to come up with ideas and we're going to talk about the ideas and then we're going to work on the ideas. And then the end project will be your ideas of each of your study groups. And there will be no quizzes. There will be no tests. There will be no papers. No, that just you guys have to come up with an idea that will save the world, right? And that's it. I guarantee everybody gets an A, right? Just come to class, work hard, come up with an idea, work it out, give your presentation, right? And so the guys I hung out, one of the guys was a really great automaton. We all had trade jobs. I was an electrician. One guy was a painter. The other guy was a mechanic. The other guy was a nurse, but he was going through this alternative technology course because his best buddy, who I knew from Harvard, was Sam Lovejoy, which is the guy who started the anti-nuclear power movement and Earth Day, right? And I knew Sam from Vermont, from Wavy Gravy. He was a buddy of Wavy Gravy's, right? So when you ask me what universities did I attend, I've just spent 26 minutes telling you, and that's just being 20. So I was at Duke. I was at UNC A and UNC Chapel Hill. I was at Trinity in Ireland. I was at Georgetown. I was at the University of Maryland and College Park and all the other schools. Hunter was the school that I was talking about, right across the street from where my parents lived. It was a girls' school. And then I studied at that University of Maryknoll in Garden City, right? It was a think tank, right? Garden City, right? And so Brookings, I was at Brookings. I was at Carnegie Mellon in Pennsylvania. So my arthritis is acting up. I was telling you I'm a lot like my mom. So 50 years of being an electrician, my knees, my ankles, my shoulders, my neck, my back, my fingers are all arthritic. But because I meditate every morning before I get out of bed, it's okay. I deal with the pain. But right now, this is the worst time for me because it's raining, it's cold, it's hot. 2 days ago, it was 80 degrees. Now it's 39 and raining. It's going to snow later. And so when it does that spring really, and the barometric pressure is going up and down, it does a number on me. Once the weather figures out what it's going to be like, whether it's going to be summer or whether it's going to be winter, then my body goes into homeostasis and it's okay. Still hurts, but not like it hurts right now. Like my whole body is kind of screaming in pain. And that's why I didn't, I was going to do something earlier, but I couldn't quite get the energy to come down the staircase to do this. So those are just some of the universities I went to. Cornell. What other school? NYU, SUNY, NYIT, New York Institute of Technology, Newark College of Engineering. I taught there. I was head of the theater department there. So I've been an itinerant scholar. So I kind of matriculated through Hofstra and I kind of matriculated through Duke, and I kind of matriculated through Chapel Hill and Georgetown. You know, I mean, those are schools that I actually was kind of, enrolled in because I was doing a project there. So, and I got degrees from a number of them because the programs that I was running, my boss would say at some point, you need a degree. So here it is. And that's how, righteous and valuable that piece of paper is. He just handed me, it was, he was head of that department or the, chief executive order of that department or school. And he had the diplomas and the little stampy thing in his desk, and he just filled it out and hit it with a stamp and said, "Here you go. If anyone asks, show them this." So that's how my education. And then I studied with, Joseph Campbell. I just hung out with him. I didn't really, be with him in any university setting. I just kind of lived nearby him. I saw him in a bookstore drinking coffee. It's one of those early bookstores that had a little coffee, thing in it. And so I sat down and started talking to him, and we hit it off, And I actually had a little board of Go in my bag, and I say, Mr. Campbell, and he goes, "Well, you can call me Joe." Once we got talking, we were friends. I said, "Do you ever play Go?" He goes, "Oh, I love Go. I haven't played Go in years. No one I can play with." So I pulled out this board, opened it up, spilled all the little stones out, and we played Go there. And that's when I became his bud. And so what's the next question? Eden has, how... guys, you need to send your chats to me in all capitals. And that way I don't have to put on 3 pairs of glasses to read it. How innocent is of a child to laugh at the crying woman at the funeral? What is that? Well, that's an interesting one. That's a very good. What do they call it? Starts with a T. Not theology, not it doesn't roll off my tongue. Not a tootlism, but something between theology and tootlism. How innocent is a child to laugh at a crying woman at a funeral? Well, and what is that? And that's many things. That can be anyone who laughs at someone who is suffering doesn't understand suffering and doesn't have the sensibility of empathy. Right now, on the other side of that, there's a great movie with Malcolm McDowell, who did Clockwork Orange and Oh Lucky Man, and If. And this movie, Oh Lucky Man, is the beginning. Our hero, Malcolm McDowell, has just left secondary school. And it was made, the movie If is these guys in a secondary school, like high school. But and they call them public schools in England, but they're for the rich people. So those schools are like between 3rd grade and the first year of college, right? And then you take your tests and you see what college you're going to go to. And If is these guys hanging out at this public school, and they're wearing their uniforms, their coat, and they're just smoking cigarettes and drinking beer and trying to get away with as much as they can, and the administration is like beating them up, and it's kind of like what I went through when I was in the seminary, but they had guns, so they had to go through a military. I mean, we had guns too, but not like they did. So, along of the story of the movie If, they blow the school up and kill everyone, right? And the next movie in that series was Oh Lucky Man, where he comes out the other side of this as kind of an innocent, can do kind of guy. And he's got his first job is that, he's a company man and he's riding around in this small little convoy, um, getting companies to put vending machines in their cafeterias, right? The sandwiches and gum and candy and what have you. And he goes to this one factory, and basically the scene opens where he's driving to go to this job, and this guy, and he's in a little putt putt kind of company car, and this guy zips by him in a Morris Minor souped up, and he looks like a really nasty guy, but then he's just shines our hero a beautiful beatific smile and zips off in front of him around a curve, and all of a sudden you hear a crash, and our hero slows down, and there's this kid who has been, the car smashes into a tree, bursts into flame. The guy gets thrown out of the car on fire, and Malcolm goes there and, puts the fire out with his coat, and the guy is, burned to a crisp, and all you can see, everything is burnt. Obviously, he's in so much pain that he's gone past the pain. And when I worked as an EMT, a number of people, I saw this, that they were going to die. They were going to die in the ambulance. There was no, if we get people back to the hospital, which normally was about the furthest our little field of dealing with things was about 20 miles from the hospital. But we could get them to the hospital within, 40 minutes. The hospital was an amazing trauma place, and they could pretty much do it. But a number of people died in the ambulance. They were dead, but they were still talking, right? And that's where, Malcolm sees this guy, and the guy goes, tell mother I love her. And then he dies. Now, I don't know how many of you have died, but I've died six times. And each time when I was still in my body and I was leaving my body, there was a point where there was, before this point, there was fear, anxiety, and pain, right? And but once the pain left, the anxiety and fear left, and you were like kind of floating in your body, and it was all good. And in that period before you left your body, all you thought about were all the people you loved and all the people you were going to miss because you weren't going to be there. And then you kind of connected that love with that sense that you weren't going to be there. And then you would realize that you already connected to them in a deeper way through your heart, right? So that's Malcolm sees this experience, right? So, he's there, and the police show up, and he kind of looks around, and they don't ask him any questions. They are, measuring this and doing that. And he says, can I go? And they said, sure, you can go. And so they don't even take his statement. And that shows how incompetent the powers that shouldn't be are. That was a symbolic gesture. And this whole movie is a bunch of symbols. So anyway, he then, goes on to his first place, and it's a nuclear power plant. And he's going in there, and he's, and everyone's wearing these white, science, jackets, coats, and he goes, and everyone. And so he's talking to the person who's in charge of the cafeteria, and they're wearing a science, white coat, right? And they're talking about, he's saying, well, we'd love to put some of these machines and da da da. And the guy goes, so what can you pay me? And Malcolm doesn't understand. He's asking for a bribe because this is like government run, spanking clean. Everyone's wearing a white coat, and everyone has to be professional. And this guy's, and he's just a lowly canteen operator, and he's asking for a bribe. Anyway, so they're talking, and the guy's trying to be as diplomatic as he can. Saying, yeah, we'll put, I'll let them put the machines in the canteen as long as you pay me a bribe. He doesn't say it, but he's trying every way to tell Malcolm that all he wants is a bribe. Then all of a sudden, the whole wee wee 10 minutes to detonation. Wee wee. Everyone get out. You have to get 20 miles away. And everyone's running and running over each other and fighting to get through the door. And Malcolm's kind of sitting in the chair. The guy out the door. He like opens the window, jumps out the window, and Malcolm looks out and he's like jumped out 3 stories, and the guy is hobbling away to his car, and cars are crashing into each other to get away. And Malcolm, it's just doesn't understand that the nuclear reactor is about to blow up and kill everyone within a 60 square mile of the thing. So anyway, everyone's gone, and they, 5 minutes to detonate, and so he gets out, he walks out, and the traffic jam is going. He gets his little Morris Minor, and he drives around burning cars and people on fire, and he drives out the gate, and he's driving down the road, and the blast occurs, and it like picks the road is like a carpet, and he's like flung down the road, and he's flying through the air, and he, comes in for a landing just at the top of a hill where it's like he where the tires hit the highway, and he no big bounce, no crash, just zing, and he flies. And so the whole movie is this experience, time after time after time, of him seeing how terrible humans are. I mean, war, and he's just in the middle of it's like Forrest Gump meets being there on steroids, right? And so at a certain point, he has been he has been educated, shown how bad things really are within the human race, even though, behind the curtain, everything, in front of the curtain, everything looks great. Behind it, it's like corrupt, like you can't believe. Anyway, the end, after he's gone through unbelievable things, he's walking down the street, and some guy goes, "Hey, you want a sandwich?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm hungry." So he goes, "Get on that line." So he's on that line, and there are all these people rushing around, and it's obviously it's in a movie set, post production, and people run around, and they all have jackets. And I don't know if you've ever been part of a movie, but one of the perks, everyone who works on gets a jacket and merch and hats and coffee cups that say the name of the thing, so you can be cool. So if that movie really hits big time, you got a jacket that says you were, So they're running around with all these jackets, say, "Oh, lucky man," right? So, and it's where the movie hits reality, because the director and the producer and the writer, all the people who directed, produced, and written are in the scene, right? Running around and with their clipboards and talking to their assistants and this, and the director comes over, because this person who's obviously the person who picks the people to star in the movie keep coming back to him and asking him questions, right? And so that 2 people who keep coming and giving him more food and keeping him there bring the director there, whoever the director was, and the director kind of goes through this checklist of seeing if Malcolm can show these emotions, anger, fear, and Malcolm sure can, because he's just experienced this whole movie of amazing experiences. And then the guy goes, "Laugh," and Malcolm goes, what is there to laugh at? What is no way am I going to laugh at. The world sucks. It's all terrible. Everyone dies a horrible death, and there's no justice, and everyone's cruel and mean, and he's going on and on and on about why should he laugh. And the director takes his clipboard and whang, slams him up against the head, and Malcolm goes flying across and smashes into a wall and kind of comes up, kind of little blood is coming from it. It kind of looks like how I looked after the nun beat me up. And he starts laughing and laughing, and goes kind of into hysteria, into mania, and so Eden asked me about, 25, 30 minutes ago, How innocent is a child to laugh at a crying woman at a funeral? And that's my explanation of why a child would laugh. And Malcolm's the child, and all the things he experienced, he could laugh at the widow at crying at a funeral, or he's a sociopath who doesn't care. And that's the next movie, Clockwork Orange, by Stanley Kubrick. Stanley didn't do the other two, but these are trilogies. I gave a cinema class, and those were the three movies I put together. And I also showed Paths of Glory and Lolita, because Stanley Kubrick is one of my favorite. And people, why didn't you show 2001? I said, because everybody's seen that. I showed them other movies that, Full Metal Jacket. Anyway, so what's the next thing Eden has to say here? You should read or listen to Charles Bukowski. Oh, that guy. I knew him in New York. He was a really good friend of mine, a friend of mine's. And so in the early days, he used to come to our, he knew, if it's the same guy, which I think it is, he died in the 70s or 80s, I think. So when I was living in the Lower East Side with Allen Ginsberg, Charles used to come to those potluck dinners. I Met a Genius. It's really beautiful. Yes, that book is a good book. All of his writings are, I don't want to say they're impenetrable, but they're not like anything else anyone else does. And he is one of the, so Eden, have you gone to xratted.blogspot.com, and have you read any of my short stories / novels? Because one of the people I try to emulate in my writing style is Bukowski. And my writing style is, as James Joyce would say, I'm proud to be a cut and paste man, And Dickens also said, not Dickens, James Joyce said, the difference between illuminated prose and what is it when you take people's writings and call them your own, that Joe Biden does all the time. Plagiarism. The difference between illuminated writing and plagiarism is you change the words. So yeah, I need to get a hold of a copy of that book because I haven't read it. Ooh, God, since 1980. Anyway. Where's Lana? I think Lana is, where is Lana? Hey, Lana, show up, girl. Lana's in Sweden. Right? There's Fish. Hey, buddy. Hey, baby. Who loves you, baby? Here. So do I look like Telly Savalas? Who loves you, baby? He didn't have a beard. And I don't have a lollipop. Oh, and here it's going unable to connect to chat. So that's always my, so YouTube isn't like taking me down or doing, but it just makes it complicated. I mean, the reason why I haven't done a live chat in the last day or two is because every time I try it, I can't get up there, and then when I do, at some point, the unable to connect to chat comes up, and then I can't see what you guys have to say. Well, you could go on to my Gmail. Let me pick up my phone and chat to me on my Gmail account. You could do that. Here, let's see. Do. Now live on the channel. Yeah, it's me. Yep, there I am. I don't need to see myself, but so the last someone sent me something. No, commented. Who commented here? New comments. See, Nicole Preston Edwards commented. What did Nicole say? She went to Kid Rock concert and saw Waylon Jennings. Yeah, I love Waylon. Wore a hat like my in a tuxedo. He was the opener. So yes, you guys can get a hold of me. Give it a try. Boo, boo, boo. There's Alan. What's Alan have to say? Hey, much love, best wishes from your pal in Northern Ireland. Just wanted to congratulate you on a superb show. I listened to this in the sunshine in my garden under quarantine and was genuinely educated, entertained, enlightened, and inspired. See, that's what I do. That's what art aspires to achieve. Additionally, I felt like chilling out with a friend, and I think of you guys as my friend. Well, one little thing popped through. Fish said, "How are you faring, Eden?" Okay. Anyway, so any new messages? No, that's about it. Oh, and I've done an amazing job. YouTube says you have earned $1 in credit. How nice of them. What did Janie Poo have to say? Anyway, so we are in the new normal. That is the same old same, right? And, in the United States, in the month of December, January, and February, 19,000 people died, right? And nobody made a big deal of it. In the 3 counties around here, they had it pretty bad. They closed the school. And then when this thing happened in February, they didn't open it again. So the kids have been out since Christmas. So, there's nobody. Oh, now there's somebody back. So again, you can get a hold of me at thedudeawake42@gmail. You can make comments. I'd love it if you guys made comments at the bottom of these shows. That would be very nice. And you can go to my xratted.blogspot.com which is my Griot Publishing, where I have my short stories, novels, and essays. And I'm working on 3 new novels. And again, I'd love to hear from you at my thedudeawake42@gmail. My PayPal is also there. I have all of $10 to my name for the next 2 weeks. So that would be nice. No one's really stuck any. People, when I first got the PayPal, people were putting money in there. That was very nice. But I really haven't had anything put in there since Christmas time. So what else is new? So this whole thing about if you go watch Jimmy Dore, he's all over this, right? And I love Jimmy Dore. And he's a righteous dude. So is David Icke. But David Icke has been at this since '91, and when a safe fell on his head, and his whole worldview changed. But David Icke, he's he's got a good storyline. He's written many books. He's covered a great deal of information, but and part of his greatness is his passion towards this. But his passion also kind of gets in the way because he's so about it. Just like the lady who, what's her name? Forget her name, but she has a channel called stopthecrime.org. She too has great information, great point of view, great experience. She's telling you what's going on from California, right? The fires and the utilities, and she's really up on water and the story. But they only know little chunks. Whereas a guy like Dark Journalism, another great thing to go see, he has been doing it for at least 10, 20 years as a journalist, and I don't know how long his YouTube channel, at least 5 or 6 years. I mean, people really popular started on the YouTube channel when it opened up, when it was like the Wild West. I came in towards the middle end, and that's why, 50,000 people watch this, but it only shows on a certain level. I look at all the math they show me, the data. I have a lot of people watching, but not that many subscribers. So subscribe, put that thumbs up. That'd be nice. And then my algorithm would go in the front. But I did a show a few weeks back that during the live chat there were almost 600 people there, right? But there in one shot, right? And I've been going on for almost 3 hours, and they had been watching it for pretty much the whole time. So, that added up to like almost 3,000 minutes for that one show. And I was like 10 minutes. If I had gotten 3,100 minutes, that would have shot me the algorithm through the roof. And they just at 3,000 minutes, they cut the show. And they gave me some lame excuse. And then the screen went black and all of the numbers showed up. How many people in them? Whoa, 500, because the little counter that has the little heads and the thumbs up just showed about 20-something people and about 12 thumbs up, right? But when the sheet came up and showed, 500 and something people were watching at the minute that they took it out, that there was like 3,010 minutes of watching time, and the show really only lasted for 240 something minutes. And it also showed that I had, 300 thumbs up, right? And, 40 new subscribers. I had gone past my 370, and I was into the 400 and something land. And I said, wow, right? So I closed the cover, went to bed, woke up the next morning, a few hours, 10 hours later, because I sleep pretty well. And I went back and just, because they said that they took down the show. And they didn't. The show was up there. And so I went on the page that showed the algorithm. And what it showed that 28 people had watched, and, something like, um, 80, more than that, like 300 minutes were watched. But it didn't show any new subscribers. And, so that's, I'm being kept in the backwashes, and that's okay, because the folk who are quite interesting, right? And so here we are in the new old normal, right? And what they're going for, and I don't know, if this is a beta test or whether they're going to go for the full Monty right away. And what I think it is that around May, we're going to, flatten the curve. And, they're going to open up the thing. And a lot of people, the unemployment is going to be at like 40%. And there's going to be a real economic turn down, right? And they're going to say, okay, so we got to prepare for the next one, because this, when winter shows up, it's going to be like the flu. It's going to be back. So we're going to have to really double down. We need more nurses, more doctors, more hospitals, more gowns, more masks, more all of that stuff, more ventilators. So that'll be a big explosion, right? And a lot of people get employed in that. And the restaurants and things, service things that kind of hung on will be very successful, because it'll be just like Forrest Gump when he's out there in the hurricane with Lieutenant Dan at the masthead screaming at God. And when they come in, they're the only shrimp boat left. So, their Bubba Shrimp becomes zillionaires, right? And they give Mama Bubba a check and she faints, right? So that's what's going to happen in or around September, October. And that's going to be the October surprise. And, from it's going to start turning around from July 4th. And, Donald Trump is going to win again. He's going to, because he's using these daily, things. He's not having his great little Nuremberg rallies anymore. So he does it on TV, and he's, his popularity is eking up, actually, not going down. And so, and everyone's going to get a check, and they're going to bring on what they're going to bring on. They say, we got to get rid of cash because it carries the virus and it's dirty. So we're going to have a digital thing. And, what they're going to do is everyone is going to have to get a digital tattoo. It could be anything, you can make it look however groovy you want to make it look. And you can put it anywhere on your body. I have one tattoo. I have it on my back, so I can't see it, right? When I was a newspaper photographer, photojournalist in High Point, North Carolina, at the High Point Enterprise, and I was doing a shoot on this guy. His name was Diamond T. Washington. He was a black guy. He had no teeth except for one front tooth, false tooth, that had a diamond in it, right? And he had a tattoo parlor that it was like, that Romero movie where all the zombies and vampires are in that Cheech and Chong Mexican bar, right? And it's a Tarantino film, along with what's his name, and anyway, that was his bar. It two tractor trailers had collapsed on top of each other on this highway, and this guy, that was his property. So no one took it away. So he turned it into a bar, prostitute, steakhouse, tattoo, and billiard parlor, right? And we went to do a shoot on him. That's when I met Norma, who ran a Hell's Angel club, and she was the smartest businesswoman I ever knew. And she chose me as her boy toy. You know, I stumbled into a bar because we got lost. We were looking for Diamond Tea, and there was this bar with all these motorcycles, and I went in there, and I nearly got ate by the guys, but she saved me and I became her boy toy. She didn't become my girlfriend. I became her boy toy. I was her bitch on the back of her bike, and that was kind of interesting. And in that whole part of North Carolina, near Durham and High Point, the Golden Triangle, the Research Triangle, all the police were scared of her. She could do whatever the heck she was like Donald Trump. She could shoot a gun off on Fifth Avenue and no one would bother her. So that's where we're at. We're at the new old normal, right? We're on the doorstep of 1,000 points of light of the fascist new world order, right? And we are the closest we've ever been towards nuclear war. There are a lot of these guys are trigger figure with their. If India and Pakistan would just, because they're always shooting at each other, right? And if it ever got where they pushed the button, all of the stress of, India is really getting stressed out now because this pandemic's going to eat that place alive because, they got 1 billion point something people there and only maybe 120 million, can ride this out, meaning they have a house they can hide in. They got enough canned food stashed away, and so this is an interesting time. And, a asteroid or a planet or something zipped out of, we're all looking up at the arc belt. We're all looking at a certain direction, but there's a whole, and about a month ago, maybe in January, a big chunk of rock came flying through, and it wasn't from the arc belt. It wasn't in our solar system. It came from out of the solar system. And the only reason we saw it is that the radar and telescopes that we have fixed on near Earth orbit, like where the space station is, we keep an eye on about 40,000 little chunks of crap that are all around this Earth. Just so some little bolt won't go flying through, the International Space Station and kill everyone, or take out one of our very expensive telecommunication satellites or weather satellites or military satellites or spy satellites. Everybody and his brother has a spy satellite up there. Elon Musk just, SpaceX just he wants to put up 40, right now there's something like, 5,000 satellites up there, and, chunks of satellites, and maybe 3,000 are actually working satellites. He wants to put up 50,000, little satellites that will be 5G the whole friggin' planet, not with antennas on lampposts, but just wherever you are, your cell phone will work. And he's doing that. He's already put up a couple hundred. He's already proven the technology and starting to set up his net up there. And so everyone's always making sure something's not going to destroy their valuable assets up in space. And so, NASA and NOAA and NSA and you name it, they, National Reconnaissance, blah, blah, blah. All those people are looking up there, making sure that some little bolt isn't going to take out one of their satellites. And because of that, their radar and their optical sensors saw this thing fly right by, and they had to like wind the tape back and look at it in super slow motion. And they saw that it was a gigantic rock, the size of a mall, not New York City size or Cleveland size, but a mall, like 2 football fields long and one football field wide, and it is right between us and the moon at about 70,000. Meaning it was coming from outside the solar system, so it was flying way faster than any of the crap that is in synchronous orbit around the sun, right? So anyway, and that was around January, and they didn't really say much. And there are been a lot of these fireballs, pretty large chunks of rock that come into our atmosphere, not in this angle, but like straight in angle. So it's got a lot of kinetic force, and instead of burning up, it comes in this way. It's got a lot of time. Comes in this way. There's a lot more kinetic force and a lot less time. And so they have what are known as fireballs, just light up the sky. I'm sure you've seen videos of the sky, like it's beyond midnight and bingo, it's bright as day. That's these things. And those rocks have the kinetic force of a nuclear weapon, small one, but boomo, it goes, instead of burning up, it just zings into luminescence, right? So that's good old E equals MC squared. So that energy is equal to the mass of that rock times the square of the speed of light. Now, the thing ain't going the speed of light, but it's going fast enough to exert, kinetic pressure to cause that chunk of light to just poof. So a lot of things are happening, more and more, unidentified aerial objects are out there and being seen by everybody. And everybody and his brother's got their, smartphone, and they take pictures, so there are a lot of images of it. So there's a lot of stuff out there. So we are living in the, outer limits. And so God knows what's going to happen. And that's the important thing. So we started out back with the Book of Runes, right? And we're going to go back to the Book of Runes. So, I got to put on 2 pair of glasses here to read this. Again, put everything in caps so I can read it. Let's see. Enjoy your good fortune and remember to share it, for the mark of a well-nourished self is the ability and willingness to nourish others, right? Share. To be honest with oneself is where all healing begins, for the seed of the courage to heal can only grow in an honest soil. In the ancient runic tradition, Fae, who stood for possessions, for cattle, and for the wealth of the community in the context of meaningful relationships. This rune speaks of the blessings to be gained through living our lives in gratitude, right? That's why I always say the prayer, bless us indeed, and enlarge our territory. Put your hand upon our shoulder and keep us from evil, so we will do no harm. That's essence of gratitude. In the ancient runic tradition, Pharaoh stood for possessions, for the cattle, and for the wealth of the community, all our relations. In the context of a meaningful relationship, all our relations. The rune speaks of the blessing to be gained through living our lives in gratitude. Thank you for everything I've received. This room of blessing received and blessing bestowed, and the recognition of the pleasures to be found in sharing your destiny with another, receiving Fahu, Fehu, Fahu, is an invitation to take a moment right now and count your blessings. So come on, let's breathe in deep and breathe out and count your blessings. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, sky, who art in heaven, who hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven, so above, so below. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Thanks for the meal, and I'm sorry for being a moron, and I forgive everyone who is a moron, right? Count your blessings. Seduced by dreams of more, better, different, we often take for granted the ordinary joy that make up the weave of our days. I've lost everything. This is all I have left of my working for the desperate lawyer crowd. The people we care about, those who care about us, honest work, home, cooked meal, the touch of a loved one's hand. So give thanks for simple pleasures, for they are among the pleasures where earth and heaven meet. Now, many a time I could have, become a zillionaire, right? Could have. And people tell, don't you, what, don't you, wish you had stuck to that? And, no, because I wouldn't be this guy. If I had stayed the authentic, naturopathic, shamanic healer that I was when I had my practice in 1975 and 6, when I lived on Pearl Street in Edison's old power station down in Wall Street, and my clientele were, Wall Street traders, and when I would heal them so they could, cheat, lie, and steal and do more drugs and gamble, they said, well, oh, wow, I feel like I'm reborn, and they said, well, how much do I owe you for that? That was amazing. And I said, when you go out my front door, there's a little table with some flowers and a little picture of the great masters. And there's a little basket, woven basket. Just put whatever you want, an offering, in that basket. And usually those guys, who are billionaires, they usually have, at least back in the 70s, they would have $1,000 of Benjamins in their pocket. And they would either throw that whole thing in or 500, no less than 500. I never said, oh, you got to pay 500. I said, whatever you want to put in there, right? And, at the very least, it'd be, I remember getting a check there for 10 grand. And, I worked at a lot of things, doing a lot of things. And if I had stuck at any one of them, I could have been a contender, right? Let's see what else Marilyn has to say for us today. When your heart is filled with gratitude, you will always live life from a place of abundance. for then you can accept any situation in which you find yourself, secure in the knowledge that you possess the resources to handle whatever life may bring, including pain, loss, sorrow, wishing nothing to be different than it is at that present moment is to invite abundance into your life. And that's what I do. That's what I've done. My grandma told me at 5, uh, when I was with my buddies, and one of them stole some bubble gum, right? And when we left and he got away with it, and he stole a bunch, right? Penny bubble gum. And, we were in our little clubhouse cul-de-sac, and he pulled all this bubble gum out of his pocket. And he said, "Wow, look what I just stole from Mr. Stein." Now, Mr. Stein had the candy store. He had a little, soda fountain, cheeseburgers, and he sold, it was a pharmacy, really. And, he didn't have to do that, but he did it. And that was like one of the only places where we could go without being shushed out. We could hang out. He'd let us read the comic books without buying them. And, my friend stole from, Mr. Stein. So I said, "How could you do that? He's a great guy. Let's just stay. And I kind of make it in feeble. So he goes, "Well, you take it." And I said, "I don't." I said, he goes, "I can't go back and I said, "Okay, not a problem. I'll take it back to him." So I did, right? So I went back to Mr. Stein, and I sat down at the soda fountain. He said, "What do you want, buddy?" And I said, "Well, I want to return something to you." And I pulled all these, penny bubble gums, like 20 or 30 of them in my pocket. And I said, "Here, these are yours." And he said, "Oh, so you took this?" I said, "No, no, no." And he goes, "I know you didn't take them. I saw your buddy take them. So I know who took them. I'm not going to say, and I don't want you to tell me because I know you're not a rat. But I really appreciate that you spoke to him and you brought this back to me. It's not like it would have broke me, but it was like an insult, a little black mark on my heart from what you guys did. Obviously, you didn't know he did it, and then he showed you that he did do it, and then you brought it back to me. And he said, "That's a truly rich, you are true." He said, "What was the term?" He said, "You are truly a wealthy person." And I kind of looked at him like with that look, the dog looks at you like, "Roar." And he goes, "It's not what you have, but what you give that makes you wealthy." I said, "Roar." And he goes, "You're also one of the most honest people I know." And, and he goes, "Yeah, because I watch you with your friends. I watch you when you're here by yourself, and you don't say much. You listen, though. I see you listening to everyone. And when you do talk to people, you speak to them directly and clearly about the thing they need to hear from you. Not any crap, any bull, but straight up." And I said, "Oh." So when I got home, my grandma, along the grandma trail, heard about this and just gave me a big hug. And she had made me my favorite eggplant parmesan for that. Normally, eggplant parmesan wasn't on the weekly menu, right? But it was that night. And she was, "I'm so proud of you." So we're going to go to the movies tomorrow, right? So let's see. There is an old wise proverb that counsels us to make a virtue out of necessity. So take what comes, this rune is saying, and find the best in it. Since Fei Yu is followed by the rune of celebration, remember to celebrate what is sweet in your life. At this moment, never forgetting that even with slender means, the sentiments of the heart can be expressed in abundance. So I keep telling people who I see, like today, my friend who's my neighbor who's letting me stay here. Uh, Now he's pretty much all healed up, but he likes the fact that I take care of his animals and I clean his house, and you know I keep making him really good meals, and he keeps going out to KFC. So and this, I just make the meals for myself. And so, like, I made a really, really big pot of stew. And now that stew will get better and better as, that stew is enough for at least half a week. And I won't eat the whole thing. I will just take a bowl worth of that stew and put it in my smaller pot and then add vegetables to that and make a more consomme soup instead of a stew. Because this has peas and potatoes. I took all the vegetables that I've had that were fresh, and they were going to start to go south, like tomorrow. So I put them all in that pot. Nice big red onion and peas, broccoli, potatoes, and a few other things. And, so now it's been all cooked up. It's all stewified, and I'll be able to eat it for at least 5 days until Monday or so. And that's so right there, that was all kind of stuff given to me. And so whenever I see people, and they kind of, are getting a little burnt out by this thing going on. And I say, you should not watch that much TV. You should not spend that much time on, social media. You should tell the ones you love how much you love them. And you should enjoy, like today. It was a rainy day, but every time it stopped, I kind of climbed up the steps and took my neighbor's dog, and we took a walk. And I found a ball in my car, and I had my lacrosse ticket, and I was throwing the ball. And that dog hadn't played catch with anybody, and it was like the newest thing on the block. And he was like, "Whoa!" And he was, he's a slobbery dog. So the lacrosse stick, I just put it out in front of me. He dropped the ball in the stick, threw it again. And so we did that for an hour. And we walked, down our road for maybe a mile or two until my legs started to hurt. And I knew I'd have to turn around and walk a mile or two back. So I knew my limits. And I kind of threw it out in the forest because he loves to be a gazelle, and he really jumps high. He can jump. So you throw it in the woods, and he will jump over a sticker bush. He just not around it or through it, just right over it. And he loves doing that. And so his owner just kind of lets him out the door and then whistles, and he comes back in. But we actually walked around. And so we'd walk around, and he'd come over. And he'd kind of lean against me and kind of whine a little bit because he was missing his daddy. I said, "He'll be back, I'm just his uncle, but he's missing his daddy." So, but we have more fun. And when he's with his daddy, he's always kind of excited. But when he's with me, he will sit at my feet and fall asleep and sleep well. And if he's sleeping and he's not with his daddy, he kind of has nightmares. So, one thing my grandma always told me was, you should live like a millionaire and not be one, right? So I have. So I'm living like a millionaire out here in the woods, and I'm not one. I'm living on $500. Right? But my true abundance is being nice. So my neighbor's girlfriend came over. They came to get the dog to go back to her house so they can be a family. And so we were talking about this, that, and the other thing. And she's a little wound up. She's watching too much TV about this. And I said, I gave her a few statistics, like the one that, December, January, February of this, those 3 months, 19,000 Americans died of the flu. And, 2,000 have died of this event, right? So, and I've talked to my friends who are doctors around the country, in San Francisco and New York, in Florida, in Boston, and a few other places. And they basically say, well, I haven't seen any of it yet, but we're kind of getting prepared, right? And then the ones who are in the city, I have two doctor friends. One is the son-in-law of one of my best friends, and the other is a youngster who I scraped off the street, put in an abandoned building, and then got him into this is, I still was somewhat of a practitioner of esoteric healing, and I was showing him, that and what medicine was, right? And I had a friend of mine at what's the name of that place? Oh, the big hospital in New York that's made all the projections about this thing and have been wrong. Who are those guys? They're right next to the Rockefeller Foundation, right next to the UN. Anyway, that's where he is. And he went to school there, and he's in that hospital. And he's saying that the real issue is that New York State is saying one thing that those doctors should do, and then the city health department is saying a different thing, and the federal government is not saying anything but other stupid things, and no one is coordinating everything together, all the resources, and so it's just a mess. Not that they're being overrun by a zillion people, but it's just a mess. And he said that they were way better organized to deal with the flu, and he's seeing this thing not being any worse than that. And that's been both those doctors' points of view. And so the thing is to appreciate what you got at the moment, no matter what's going on. Oh, I hit the glasses. At the worst of times, it is still within our power to reach out, to love, to show kindness, to share what is ours to share. Hard times honor us by their presence, encouraging us to draw upon our strengths, reminding us of the wealth we all call family, all our relations and friends, the ability to take joy in each other when life is difficult is a true sign of abundance. I do that every day. I try to cut everyone's slack, because I can be a pretty serious cynic. And what greater abundance is there than our relationship with God, love's co-creation? When we learn to live in faith and trust with abundance, our need for control struggle less and feel our fears subdued. As we allow ourselves to be supported and uplifted by the divine. Guidance, abundance takes the form of inner peace and the desire to treat all life with respect and loving kindness. I give thanks and praise for the abundance of this moment. Me with you. Right? So, this paragraph, I want you to listen and type into your superconscious mind right there. So, when you close your eyes, you see it typed out in your imaginary mirror. And when greater abundance is there, then our relationship with love's co creation. When we learn to live in faith and trust with abandon, we abandon our need for control, struggle less, and feel our fears subside. As we allow ourselves to be supported and uplifted by love's co creation, the divine guidance abundance takes from the inner peace and the desire to treat all life with respect and loving kindness. Well, I sure would love to know how you feel about all this, gang. And it is now pushing 11 o'clock, and no one can chat because it says unable to connect to chat. Please try again later. So I will tomorrow, right? So again, I'd love to hear from you on my Gmail, the dude awake 42 at Gmail. I would love it if you were to, give the thumbs up here to get more people to subscribe, to go to my xratted.blogspot.com and see my writings and make comments there. And my PayPal is on my Gmail account, my dudeawake42 at Gmail. And what else can I say? Stay well, my friends. I will see you tomorrow. I'm getting tired, so I'm going to go to bed. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope it was entertaining. Remember, don't believe a word I say. I'm just your griot telling you a story. And if you have any questions, you want any insights, you want to have a conversation, get a hold of me at my Gmail, thedudeawake42 at Gmail. Okie dokie. It's just me and AI, so I will say I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow if the YouTube gods allow. Okay.